Hello everyone, this is Jessica from Adoministics YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing what it's like to live next to a water resource where I live next to this pond and I have all my life. And I'll show you all, I'll try to turn the camera around to show you all a little bit right there. And at the end of the video, I will walk you around and show you the pond. And you're welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. I appreciate you for stopping by. And I'll go ahead and show you the skies and the weather while I'm at it too. And out here, there's gnats flying all around my phone, camera. Sorry about that, but it feels pretty nice outside here today, and the clouds look mostly gorgeous, except for this behind me. I'll try to spin the camera around so you can see. They're kind of gray behind me. Over here in front of me, they're pretty clear though, blue, white puffy clouds. Looks like a plane's flying around. That's what you're seeing there, that trail. Just beautiful clouds in the sky. But it looks pretty clear down that way. But the other side looks pretty gray looking, like behind me in the other direction. And it feels like it might rain later, but it's not really that hot right now. It's kind of humid feeling. Not real high humidity, but high enough, I guess you could say. I think I heard thunder just now, so I might have to speed this video up. Alright, so anyways, I would appreciate it if any of y'all have not already subscribed to my channel. It really helps me out, and thank you for doing so if you have. So let's get into it. I wrote down the good and the bad. So the good part about living next to a water resource is when the power goes off, you can use it to, if you have to bathe in, or just anything like that if you need to, if the power goes off or whatever. But the bad part is, and I've not done it, but I've seen my dad doing it before years ago. And then the bad part is pests and insects. And just like out here while I'm doing this video right now, there's all kinds of gnats flying around this video. There's always mosquitoes, and all my life I've been ate up by mosquitoes. And there's also like a lot of horse flies, dragonflies, just a lot of pests and insects and stuff like that. There's a lot of mice, rodents or whatever, and rats. Anytime you have a water resource like that and you live near it. And then also, what are those things called? Termites that eats the wood of your house and can rot your house down and stuff. Those are really bad around water resources. And that's one reason why too, like I got after the flood that we had back here in July of 2022, it made it worse, and I was seeing mice and rats coming in my house all the time. And so that's why I got cats to kind of kill off of those mice and rats and stuff like that. That's why when I started getting cats and stuff in my house. I had one that passed away back in 2023, and then after that I waited some months in between, and then that's when I started getting all the cats that I have now and kittens and stuff. It does look like the rain is going to start coming this other direction, so I've got to speed this video up. I'm sorry, you all. But that is something that is extremely bad about having a water resource or living next to a water resource, is pests and insects, especially mosquitoes, June bugs, dragonflies, horse flies, just all kinds of bugs, spiders, anything you can think of really whenever it comes to insects and stuff. They're just so bad for it. And then too, like if you have like a pond like that's behind me that my dad and my uncle own, turtles is really bad. And I know a lot of the neighbors that have ponds next to this pond here, they don't like turtles. And also, you got to think about snakes, anything like that, reptiles or whatever, frogs, anything like that can be really bad about living next to, especially a pond or like a river or something. Anything like that, it can be bad to live next to on those account of reasons or whatever. Excuse me. I'm going to try to hurry this video up, guys, because I think it's going to rain on me. So, the next thing that would be good is if you live next to a water resource, would be like if shift happens. In other words, like if let's just say, for instance, like if the power grid went down or something, and, or we get into a WW3 or something, that's going to be good because you can use it for like a water resource. You could boil the water, whatever, I'm sure, and you might could drink it like that. And then you could bathe in it if you have to. And then you could cook with it if you have to or whatever. And you could use it as a resource for fishing and stuff to collect meat, fish, protein and stuff. So that would be good during shift. But on the side effect of that, the bad part of that is during the shift, it's going to be like a free for all. I hear thunder, y'all. It's going to be a free for all, and it doesn't matter even like me, like where I'm having to live at right now. This is a private pond. It does not belong to me at all. It does not, absolutely not, does not belong to me at all. And anyways, that looks like a hand clawing but the opposite way, that cloud right there, if I'm pointing to it the right way. But anyways, sorry, I got distracted. But it's going to be a free-for-all. If anybody knows you have like a water resource, no matter what it is, during shift, when that happens, it's going to be a free-for-all. People are just going to think that they can overrun everything and use you and whatever, So that's the bad part of having a water resource. Alright, let's move on because I am hearing thunder. The good part about having a water resource next to your home or wherever you live at, it cools your home. It does cool your home down by a few degrees, so that probably would actually be a frugal thing too. It would save you money a little bit, not much, but maybe a little bit. It's the same thing like how used to years ago, probably 100 years ago or whatever, whenever they didn't have inside air conditioning and stuff. Like if you had, that's why people always wanted trees and stuff in their yard around here, especially here where I live out in eastern Kentucky. They wanted trees, which I don't have that problem really because I live right next to the mountains and stuff. But a lot of people in open spaces, they'll plant trees and stuff because of the shade that it produces in the summer months and spring months or whatever, and it cools you down. And then also that those shade trees can cool you down and stuff too, like that. Just like water, living next to water can cool your home or your house or whatever you're living in. It can cool it down by like a few degrees, not much, but a little bit. And then too, like what they used to do 100 years ago or so, whenever they didn't have heat pumps or cooling units or whatever, is they would place like sheets, but they would soak them down with cold water, and they would weight them, and then they would put them like in the inside of homes or houses or whatever, in the doorways, and that would kind of cool them down and stuff, especially like when they used to leave their doors open, and if there was a breeze or something, the wind would blow those covers or sheets, and you would feel like, a coolness from the sheets and stuff in the summertime. So that would be a good thing. And then the bad part about that, which it's really don't tie together, but living next to a water resource, it's just like anything else. It's just like people and animals. They're the same. Whether it's bears, coyotes, dogs, cats, mice, rats, whatever, snakes, which I know they're reptiles or whatever. but we do get lots and lots of snakes and stuff around the pond, and you get lots of poisonous snakes around the pond, and that's a bad thing. Is like the copperheads, and sometimes the copperheads, I know I mistake them accidentally sometimes for like water snakes because they look so much alike. And so that's a really bad thing about living next to a water resource. And then just another thing too, it can be good or it can be bad, is sorry. Living next to a water resource is the wildlife animals that come in here, like those crane birds or heron birds or the ducks and stuff like that, or the wild geese or Canadian geese or whatever. Because whenever they're migrating and stuff to go up north, they always come by this, especially where this pond is a little bit bigger back there. They always stop by here every time they're migrating and stuff. And it's also bad because when they do that, I mean, I like it and I enjoy it. That's why I say it can be good or bad. But it can be bad because, too, like in neighborhoods like where I live at, every one of the neighbors around here, except for me, they have dogs on the outside. And they don't like the ducks and stuff, just like they don't like the turtles and stuff. And they don't like the Canadian or wild geese either and stuff on the ponds. A lot of people around here will use their pew-pews and stuff on them. I don't, but a lot of people in my neighborhood will do that. And they don't like, people around here are real territorial over animals in general. And they don't, just like they are properties and stuff. And they don't like that. And so, especially them Canadian or wild geese, those are really bad about using the bathroom everywhere, like diarrheaing with their poop everywhere. And they're real mean too, those Canadian wild geese are. So that's the bad part about the animals thing. And, animals are just like humans. They use ponds and or water resources just like we do for food and drinking and stuff like that too. So it's getting really dark all the fast on that side, all of a sudden on that side over there, but it's still clear over here and stuff. Anyways, let's move on because I don't want to get rained on and I got stuff to do. Another good thing about living next to a water resource, it can be very calming. It can be very peaceful living next to a water resource. And then I think that's self-explanatory. Just nature in general can be calming and stuff. And water can be very soothing. I love to listen at nighttime to the sound of water and stuff. Just it helps me go to sleep sometimes. But on the other part of that is the bad part, the bad side, is people. And people can be loud. And it doesn't matter who those people are, whether those people are your friends, your family, people in the neighborhood, people you don't know, but people that just drive by and they see that you have some kind of water resource. I couldn't tell you how many times since I've lived here that my family members have had to run people off because people come in here, they'll drive by and then they'll get a scene. They'll think that it's like a public pond, and it's not. It's absolutely not a public pond. And I got a sign up there on that power line pole that says no fishing, no hunting, etc., etc., etc. This is private property, and this is private property. And I wouldn't recommend people to come around nobody's property, especially around here. That's just uncalled for. Why would you want to do that? You don't do stuff like that. It's not going to be good for you. So I would not recommend that at all. But in the past, there has been several people that's tried to come in here, or they'll think that just because they know you, like I'm saying, for instance, say that they know me or they've heard of me or something, and they'll use my name or something, and they'll say that it's okay that I said it's okay. Absolutely not. I do not own this pond. Absolutely not. I have nothing to do with this pond. Even if it touches my property over here, I do not own the pond. I cannot give no one no rights to fishing on that pond. It does not belong to me. I will not inherit that pond, and I will not give any person permission to fish on that pond on this property. No one has no rights to be on no properties around here. Any my neighbors or mine, nobody's. Absolutely not. You're not welcome here, and you will be ran off one way or another. But anyways, that's one of the bad things about having a water resource, is because people will think that, and also they'll use that excuse all the time if they don't know you or whatever. They'll just be like, well, it's a public pond. It is absolutely not a public pond. And so that's a bad thing about living next to a water resource. And also another bad thing about that, whether it's people's friends, it's starting to sprinkle on me, y'all. I'm trying to hurry. Um, Whether it's like your family members that have friends, or even if it's family members or it's friend of friends or whatever, like, because I'm not the owner, but like other people that are the owners, I don't have a say in it, like whether or not they want people fishing and stuff. And it's so frustrating and it's so aggravating when people come here fishing and stuff, whether they're friends or family, like I said, because just because they're family doesn't mean that they love and support me or my children, and that's all I care about, just like all they care about is their own, so why would I want them on my property or my side of it fishing or whatever if they can't speak 2 words to me or whatever, or 1 word to me or whatever. So that's the bad thing about people and stuff whenever you have a water resource, is because even like family members or friends, like I said, like that, they won't pay me no knowledge or my children no knowledge, but they don't care one bit to walk through my daggone yard. And I do own this yard because it is in my name, whether anyone likes it or not. And they don't care one bit to walk through my yard and just stick their nose up in the air and not speak no words to me or nothing, or my children or whatever. And they'll do it at the hours, like on sunny days, the days that everybody wants to, or holidays. They'll do it on the days that everybody, including me where I live here, that I want to be outside. I like nature too. And so they'll do it on those days, and then you can't even come or feel comfortable in your own house and come outside and enjoy your own yard or nothing, because you got people out in your yard fishing and stuff. And then another bad thing about that, and they'll stay from daylight to dark. They won't leave until it's time, it's dark, and then you don't get no enjoyment out of it living in that property or whatever with that resource. And then another bad thing about it is too, is they'll start bringing, just because they're family or friends or whatever, they'll start bringing their friends or whatever. And then their friends will start thinking, oh, it's okay because they've hung out and done it a few times. And that's how it always goes. And then another bad thing about that with people, too, is people are so daggone nosy. Let's just say that you wanted to go swimming in it instead of fishing or whatever. You would sit and be stared at the whole time that you're sitting and swimming and stuff. So that's another bad thing about having people and stuff. And they're so freaking loud. Sorry for saying that word, but it's the truth. People are so loud and they have no respect or nothing. That's just it. They have no respect at all for other people and stuff. So they think everything's okay, that the world revolves around them. That's just how people are. All right, let me move on because I'm getting a little bit upset. Okay, so another good thing, this is the good side. The good thing about living next to a water resource, the wind's starting to blow, it's starting to get stormy looking. Anyways, living next to a water resource is, it's very beautiful. And that's pretty obvious, or I think it is anyways. I think that water resources like that, or anything, whether it's the beach, the ocean, lakes, rivers, ponds, whatever, they're all beautiful. And so that's pretty obvious. The bad thing is trash. Whether that's their whatever they're snacking around on, whether that's whatever kind of bait that they bought for that day, whether that's if say that they chew tobacco or something like that, or I don't know, whether they're drinking or whatever they're drinking, or even like their fishing lures, their fishing lines, their fishing bobbers, their fishing hooks, all that stuff. They do not care. They do not pick up after themselves. And so that's the bad thing about people and stuff. They leave their trash behind and it never gets picked up or out of the way. And you might find it in your foot, like a hook or something like that later on. Or it might be if you say you have outside animals, you might find like a hook or they might swallow a bobber or something. So that's a bad thing about having a water resource or living next to a water resource. Okay, let me move on. Another good thing about living next to a water resource is you can either swim in it or fish in it. And that's pretty obvious. Growing up, I used to love to swim, and I do love to swim. I don't swim in the pond no more. I haven't since I've been a teenager, but I did used to swim in it. I never really was much on fishing, but that's on the bad side. So the bad part about living next to a water resource is you get burnt out, especially like me where I've lived here all my life. Like I said, I grew up and I mainly like swimming. I still like swimming. I don't really much care for fishing. I've only been fishing in this pond or fishing in general maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. But it's just not something I enjoy. I guess because I don't have much patience anymore. Like I used to when I was a child, I had more patience than what I have now, unfortunately. But anyways, that wind is starting to pick up. I'm sorry. But like, let's say for instance my relative over here, that used to be my grandfather's house on my dad's side, and then after he passed away my uncle received it. Okay, his child, he only has one child. Anyways, he grew up and he lived a little bit further up in the holler from here, and used to, before they moved into that house where they didn't live next door to it all the time, he used to love fishing. The little boy did, my cousin, which he's a grown man now. But anyways, he used to love fishing. But then after he grew up and he moved into that house, he got burnt out and he starts liking swimming better. But none of us really swim in that pond no more. I mean, hardly ever. But anyways, you just do. And then it's like the same thing with my sibling. Whenever we was growing up, he was the same way. He wasn't really much of a fisherman or outdoorsman or nothing like that. And there's a person going by on the lawnmower. Sorry, I was distracted. He always enjoyed swimming better than he did fishing. Same thing with my dad. Like, my dad's lived in that house right there all his life. That was his dad's. And I'm pretty sure that he's not much of a fisherman. Every now and then, but it's hardly ever. And he mostly swims, and enjoys swimming better. And then even a little bit with my uncle that lives in that house now. He likes to do both, swim and fish too, but the only reason I think that he really fishes is just whenever he's going to have like a fish fry or something. He don't really fish that often or nothing. But like every one of us around here, even though I don't own the pond, I will feed the fish, and you all will see me feeding the fish as soon as I'm done with this video or whatever. Well, I'm getting ready to be done with it anyways. But anyways, you just get burnt out if you live next to a water resource, and you end up choosing one or the other. Like if you use it for swimming, you'll either choose swimming. If you use it for fishing, you'll choose fishing. So that's my reasons or whatever, or my points of views, my opinions on what it's like living next to a water resource. Now, if I had the money and if I didn't live here, if I could move, would I still want to live next to a water source? Yeah, I would. I definitely would. I would still choose the good over the bad. Um, I just would have it different if I could, if I had the money to do so. I would have it like more private than this or whatever. I would have it a lot more private looking than what this is. I'm going to put my drink, I'm drinking water, I got to get me a drink right now, on my paper so it won't fly off. But yeah, I definitely would. Those are good waters, you all. And I think they make their stuff from recycled bottles. And they make like out of jeans and stuff like that. The plastics. I don't know. I'm not really sure on how it works. Here's what the skies are looking like right now. But I do think we're getting ready to have a storm here in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. Okay, here's my bread. I'm going to feed the fish for you all. But yeah, like I said, I would, if I could, and if I could afford to move or whatever, I would get, I would have a pond again, or like a little tiny lake or something, bigger than this pond, if I could afford all that, you know, or if I had the property for it. The thing about too is just property in general. Property is so hard to find here. It's very hard to find. But I didn't write it down, and I just thought about it just now. But this is another good thing about living next to a pond. It does kind of teach you a little bit about science and biology and stuff. You know, the way the pond and stuff works. It kind of teaches you about that, and insects and stuff. But growing up, whenever I was younger, there's that big bird down there. Let me see if I can scroll it in to show you guys while I'm out here. Hopefully you don't fly off on the other side. But whenever I was younger growing up here, my grandpa, when he was alive, he used to have a little thing down there he would sit on. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but on the other side of the pond there, he built those little concrete blocks things, kind of like as a diving board for me and my sibling growing up, so we could swim in the pond. But my grandpa always used the pond mostly for fishing and stuff too. So like I said, usually you either go one way or the other whenever you're living next to a water resource. You usually either choose swimming or fishing or whatever. And you go through like a burnout too with a lot of things. And I know I'm not the only person living around here. My mother, whether she admit it or not, she's felt the same way I have growing up too. And it's not because I don't know what you want to call it, but we think alike or nothing like that. It's just that people can be similar or whatever and not get along or whatever. But anyways, so I don't feel bad for saying that at all. But anyways, down there at the other end, before this pond was dug out, this pond got dug out, and I talked about that on a different video, a longer video a while back. But probably whenever I was a child, I can't remember what age, but when they had excavators and other machines in here to dig it out, my dad did pay for it to be dug out, and it was like $10,000 back at the time to have this pond dug out. This is pretty much like a swampland, especially like back in his time, I'm sure, when he was growing up, because this ground and stuff is all clay. It's really hard to dig into and stuff around here. But anyways, back whenever they dug this pond out and stuff, they would take the mud and put it over on this yard where my house sits now. And so there was like mud piles all over this yard and stuff that was probably about, let me scroll back on the phone, sorry. There was mud piles and stuff all over my yard back then that was probably up to my grandpa's house. And it was probably like 5 feet high off the ground, like midways up that trampoline and stuff. There goes a train by. They're still working on the tracks, I guess. But or train cart or whatever, machinery. There it goes. But anyways, one of my siblings' friends, he had a group of friends over here, and we was all walking around on the mud piles, and he got stuck way past his waist, about right through there where that table is, or that barbecue grill of mine is, a little bit past there and through there. He got stuck in the mud, and it was like quicksand whenever they had it dug out or whatever. But the reason why my dad had it dug out is because we wanted a swimming pool growing up, but where we've always lived next to these train tracks over here, they told us that we couldn't have an in-ground swimming pool, and they didn't want us to have an above-ground swimming pool. But we always wanted a swimming pool, and they wouldn't get one. So because they said the train, where the train goes by there, the train blows its horn and stuff, or its whistle right in front of my house, where my house is now. But anyways, they said the vibration of the train going by would crack the concrete for a swimming pool. So at the time, and that was when I was a child, I don't know how old I was for sure, but I think I was anywhere from like 10 up to maybe, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. I can't remember. But they said the vibrations would crack the train, I mean, not the train, but the swimming pool or whatever. Sorry, can't think straight. But it was the same price back then when I was a child to have this pond dug out is what it would have costed back then to put a swimming pool in. But it was probably because of the size of the pond. I don't know. But it was $10,000 to have it dug out and stuff back then. Anyways, this is what this pond looks like and stuff. And you can see all these little bugs and stuff over here on it too. There's always little pests and stuff like that on the, and slime and algae and stuff. That's another bad thing I forgot to write down about having a water resource like that, because wild animals, especially ducks and stuff, they'll come in here when they're migrating, and they'll carry in on their paws and stuff little bits and pieces of like that. It's called duck, I think it's called duck meat or something like that, or meal or algae or something. And it can take over your, like if you have a pond, it can take over lakes and parts of rivers and stuff like that. And that's also another bad thing about having a water resource like that. It's very, very, very costly to keep up. You're talking about very, very costly things to keep up a water resource like that. And if you have to haul fish in here, usually in the past, from what I remember years ago, they would have to go to an out of state up north in Ohio to get fish from like a fish hatchery or whatever it's called. And that stuff can be very costly too, and that's what they do for like pay lakes and stuff too. And they have to bring them in here, everything has to be at a certain time and stuff. And then too, if that water mill stuff takes over your pond, I'm not positive, but I think that stuff is like $500 a gallon. It's very, very expensive. And you know how the economy is nowadays and how expensive everything is. And also, like, if you want to dye your pond, and they have dyed their pond before, make it like turn a real pretty blue looking color or whatever, that stuff is very, very costly too. But I'm not positive on how much that cost, but I know it's like very, very costly for just like 1 gallon of that stuff to turn your pond like a bluish looking color or whatever. I don't think it hurts the fish or anything whenever you do that, but I'm not positive. um in this pond here, we've had problems before, but they got it pretty clear right here now, is with the algae and stuff just taking over. Like I said, that stuff can be like the neighbor's pond over here. I'll walk over here for a second and show you. This right here stuff is called water meal. Got a bug in my eye. But this right here is called water meal. It looks like algae and stuff, but it's not. And then there's another neighbor down there that's got a pond too. But that stuff right there takes over, and they've never had theirs dug out or anything like that. So those other two ponds are kind of swampy like, but this one was dug out and used to, but I'm sure the mud's like, what is that called? I'm sure the mud's kind of made it fall in. But back whenever I was a child and this was dug in, the deepest part of the pond used to be right there. Before it got dug out, it was only probably about maybe 2 to 4 feet deep at the deepest. But after they had it dug out, the deepest part was like right in through here in front of that deck right there. And it was probably about 9 or 10 feet at the deepest point. But I'd say over the years, the mud's kind of fell back in, so I'm sure it's not as deep as it used to be or nothing like that. And I've talked about that before on my other videos in the past. But that stuff can all be very costly and stuff too, just to upkeep a pond, especially if you're going to use it for fishing and stuff. And you do have to sometimes buy fish and stuff. And then another bad thing I forgot to write down is you will find dead fish and carcasses and stuff in the pond, even other dead animals sometimes. Not a whole lot, but sometimes. And I don't know if that's because of like a bacteria that's killing off the fish or what, but sometimes that happens and stuff. So that can be a bad thing too. And then it's getting windy, it's gonna storm. And then the only other thing I know about that's in this pond here, like I said, it does not, absolutely does not belong to me. But they keep like carp in the pond, and I don't really much know. I think carp can be, I think they've been aggravated before in the past. They wish that they hadn't never brought no carp in here. I can't really remember why for sure, but I think because the carp is like a huge fish and it eats some of the other fish is why. And they mostly want to keep like bluegill and bass in here. But I think the carp is bad about where it's a bigger fish, and then catfish is another one too. I don't think a lot of people really much around here care for catfish, and there's a ton of catfish in this pond. We have a little bit of bluegill, there's black bass, or bass, I mean not black bass, but bass, and then carp. And then I don't know if there's crappie in here or not. I don't know a whole lot about fish, but I know a little bit. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and feed the fish. Let you all see me feeding the fish here before I let you go. And whenever I was growing up too, I'm sorry I go all over the place, but before it was dug out, I don't know if any of y'all have ever watched that movie Stand By Me, but that those little boys like go through somewhere and they get leeches all over them. Anyways, whenever I was younger, I didn't know how to swim, and it was before I had swimming lessons, and I used to be terrified of the water. And so I would hang on to the banks. There used to be roots on the banks or the sides of the pond, and I would hang onto them with my hands, and I wouldn't move. That's how I used to swim when I was a child, before I had swimming lessons. And I'm still not the best swimmer there is. I can barely swim. I just like to swim though. I'm comfortable enough to swim. I'll just put it like that. I like to float. But anyways, back then, every time we'd go swimming before it got dug out, and the roots was like next to the sides of the pond, and I'd hold on to them, and I'd be like in the grassy areas and stuff, I would end up with leeches all over my body and stuff whenever I'd get done swimming, every time I used to swim. That was before they had it dug out though. And then too, another bad thing I forgot to write down and talk to y'all about is just the erosion of a pond. You can see it on my side of the yard over here, how far it's went in. It didn't used to be that far inside the yard like that. It's eroded over the years, and it's probably eroded, at least in that section, I would say it's eroded off about probably close to, I don't know, I'd say close to 10 feet, because it used to come out here a lot further. It's just eroded over the years. You can kind of see down there, or over here on this other side, they have rocks, just like they have rocks right here. That's because of the erosion and stuff. And then yes, like even how do I say it? It pertains to like creeks and stuff like that too. I mean, like they can have the same problem with erosion and stuff over time. That's why, like, you'll see on the side of creeks and stuff, you'll see trees and stuff like that too. There's not a lot of trees, if you notice, on this side of the yard, but they keep some over there. And I think that's one of the reasons why, is because of the erosion. And then too, like, on the other side of the yard over there, you'll see that big weeping willow tree. I love weeping willow trees. They're absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. But their roots are so big, and all their roots does is keeps on growing and stuff. It's starting to sprinkle, you all. And their roots will go into stuff like piping and wiring and stuff like that. That's why you don't see a whole lot of people having weeping willow trees around here and stuff. But it's starting to sprinkle, so let's just go ahead and feed these fish. Let's see if they take any bites. They might do it, because usually the best time, what I've figured out, what little bit I know about fishing, is they like it when it's starting, before it starts to rain or after it starts to rain, is whenever they like to eat. So, but it's raining right now, so they might not, or they could. You never know. I don't know if anyone's fed them today or not. But any of that stuff can be expensive too. And having a water resource like a pond or a lake or something is even like the fish food and stuff. And in another story, whenever I was growing up, I had this mow on my back. I had it removed, but before I had it removed, whenever I used to go swimming off of that deck of the pond, the fish would, because it was the same color and it was the same size as the fish food that we used to buy to feed the fish. So that I would get in there and just start, floating around or something. And it wasn't nothing for fish to start nibbling on my back on that mow before I had it removed and stuff. I used to have a huge it was a black looking mow too on my back. And then I had it removed and stuff. I had to get it removed. But it looked just like the fish food that we used to buy to feed the fish. I'm not positive, but I think that dye that you get for the ponds, I think it's like $50-something a gallon, but I could be wrong. It might be more than that. I know with the upkeep on stuff like that, it's very, very expensive. And we did years ago, they did have because they actually bought it for my wedding. My mom wanted one anyways, but and I don't blame her. But you'll see it on that deck laying over there. There's a fountain that used to be over here more towards my side of the yard here, in the middle part here of the pond where I'm feeding the fish. And it was a big old fountain, and it was beautiful, and it was lovely. But as soon as it tore up, they never did fix it or nothing. Anyways, though, I guess that bird was going down there to get it, something to eat too. But anyways, whenever they had that fountain is really good too. Whenever you have water resources, it's a good thing to have, but they are very costly. I think that fountain was like I could be wrong, but I think it was like $5,000 or more whenever they bought it. I see some little movement down here with something. Might have been a fish, might have been a turtle. I can't see it right now where it's raining. There's something dragging the bread down. But that fountain just tore up and they never did fix it, so. But it was a good thing, and it can be a bad thing too. But it's good for your ponds, like it gives them oxygen or something. And it helps rotate the waters, and like whenever that watermeal stuff or duckweed, whatever it's called, whenever it got real bad, it would help push it away and stuff. There goes that bird flying over, that Harwin bird. There's a rooster. I don't see anything else biting. Usually the good thing about carps though, and that's probably why that they got it, I'm just assuming it, is you see all that slime, that algae around the sides of the pond. Carps love that stuff. They love to eat it. So, and they do keep it pretty clear. Well, you guys, I'm gonna get off of here since it's raining now, and I don't see any more fish biting or nothing. So I'm gonna get off of here. Thanks for watching my video. Whew, bug went up my nose. That's what I'm talking about. All the insects and bugs are so bad, especially next to a water resource. But if I had my way or whatever, I would find a piece of property and it would be more private if I had the money and stuff too. And I would still build myself or dig myself out some kind of water resource. And it would, if I had my way and the money and stuff and the property, I'd have it more private and bigger than what this one here is. Now this over here is the neighbors that's next door to us. It's their family's pond. And then the other one on the other side of that tree down there that's down, there's another little pond and that belongs to the other neighbors. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye-bye.